welcome to another weekly episode of the Beer Fridge Podcast, Real Beers, Real Breweries, Real Opinions, sponsored by This Week in Craft.beer. Sign up to the free weekly newsletter, get all the craft beer news from your favourite breweries and that all-important new beers list as well. This Week in Craft.beer. And we're powered by Patreon. Head to patreon.com/Beer Fridge Podcast. Show your support for the podcast and you can get access to exclusive content. Patreon.com/Beer Fridge Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beer Fridge Podcast. Real beer, real breweries, real opinions. As always, head to our Instagram, Facebook and Twitter pages, search Beer Fridge Podcast, like, follow and share. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Make sure you hit that subscribe button to be notified of the latest episodes of your favourite beer podcast. As always, my name is Gavin Baxter. I've got my drinking buddies, Callum and Mark. Good evening.
Hello, gents. Tonight we're joined by Paul, the founder of The Craft Agent. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, man. I'm not doing too bad at all. Nice to be with you.
It sounds like you should... you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put the James Bond theme behind that.
We need to...
Don't mate, that's bad. Don't do that.
The Craft Beer Agent.
If you use if you use the AHA one or something like that, you know, from the Living Daylight or something like that.
Anyway, sorry.
I'm just going to say we'll crop your LinkedIn picture with your head snap, and then we'll get you with the full cropped into the 007 thing.
The blood and stuff. Anyway.
Anyway, as I say, we've got Paul from the Craft Agent here. So we'll start as we usually do with going round the old virtual drinking table and seeing what we're kind of getting stuck into. I know Gav's had a bit of a overtone orgasm as per on his beer. So Gav, tell us what you're drinking, mate.
What else do I need to say other than it's overtone? Thank you very much. Next. No, I'm on. It's all Vic Secret, 8% double IPA, single hopped, double dry hopped. Absolute masterpiece of a beer. This might be.
Here we go.
It's in the top 3 of Deepers of the Year, at least.
Ooh,
I can't decide the order, but it's in the top 3. Thick, juicy, what you're expecting. It's bursting full of flavour. There's pineapple, there's mango, there's passion fruit, smacky in your face. It's lovely and thick. The colour is tremendous. Overtone, you've done it again. You've made me bankrupt once again. So yes, thank you for doing that. So no, absolutely tremendous beer. Thoroughly recommend. And the thing is, this has been sitting in my fridge for a couple of weeks. So in terms of Overtone, this is ancient.
That is ancient. That is, there's probably been 3 different Vic Secret beers since that one's been released.
There's literally been 4 new beers since I'm like, fuck off. Go for it, Marky then.
Well, I'm on Northern Monk Patrons beer. So this is one that was kindly gifted to me.
Is that the French version?
What was that?
Is that the French version?
Patron.
Le French, yep, correct. You know me and my accents. So this is the Larn Bakar. So it's a Nigerian infused, or maybe not infused, but
inspired
foreign extra stout here. So it's 8.3%. So pretty sessionable for me. What I'm loving about it, and it's still a wee bit cold, so I'm kind of letting it heat up so far, but it is a non-bullshit stout. Now, it's 8.3%, so it is obviously deemed like an extra here, so it has got a wee bit of kick to it, but it's creamy, it's smooth, it's got a really roasted bitey chocolate that you really want, when the kind of chocolate It's like proper roasted dark chocolate, but it isn't bitter that it takes it away from the kind of the malt that you come to expect from like a good traditional stout. It is super cold because it came out the fridge, but I'm hoping when it warms up, it's just kind of going to be even more sort of delish. But honestly, it's pretty bad.
It sounds good, and you're welcome, by the way. Callum, what you on?
Well, I'm blowing my own trumpet this evening. I'm getting higher my own supply.
Oh, yes.
And this is my Billy's 8 Shilling version 2.0. And it's just as good as I remember it was the last time I had one. And this is for you, Paul. You maybe not heard. Mark and I are dabbling our toes into the brewing side of things. So this is my set. This is my of sort of Scottish 80 Shilling style beer.
Wow.
So a little bit more roast than you would maybe normally expect in an 80 Shilling, hence the sort of dark colour. But I've added some treacle in there to sort of maintain that sweetness. Really treacle on the nose particularly, but there's a lovely sweetness. It's really malty, not too much roasted flavour, despite the colour. And it's super smooth, great body to it for me anyway. And it's going down an absolute storm and nicely sessionable at 4%, which is kind of where you would expect a sort of Scottish ale to be. If anybody wants to get a hold of that, you need to go onto Patreon, become a Patreon subscriber, and we can hopefully send you some beers, but we better act quick because they're running out fast.
Or if you're in France, you go to Patron.
Aye, Patron.
Oui, Patron.
Paul, what are you on yourself, mate?
Tonight I am currently drinking a throwaway IPA by Seven Brothers, which is the brewery from Manchester that actually is Seven Brothers and Four Sisters as well. So there's 11 of them, and so I was actually there this morning, and so I've got a can of throwaway IPA that's straight off of the canning line. So it's as fresh as it can possibly be. But this is the beer that they make using upcycled old Kellogg's cornflakes. And so it's interesting because it never sounds like it's going to be a particularly amazing beer when you say, cornflakes. Like, what's that really to a beer? But it's, it's 5%. It's just a really solid, awesome IPA. I really enjoy it. I could drink tons of it. It's just one of those beers that, we're not talking, double cryo, brain destroying hop soup. We're talking really, really solid beer, and that's one of the reasons I love those guys in general. They make solid beers, like really good beers that are they're faultless pretty much every single time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really like it. And it's got kind of I think your brain plays tricks with you as well when you drink this beer because of the fact it's got cornflakes in it. You can actually get this weird kind of, I don't know, almost milky flavor that comes through, and then you go, that's not really there though, is it? It's like it's interesting, like what happens when you look at some packaging and drink, and then you taste what you look at, So yeah,
interesting,
lovely beer.
It's really funny because me and Gav had that beer when we had that beer on the train back from Brighton when I was down in July.
Oh
yeah. Gav won't remember because he was doing the backstroke by that point.
I cannot remember that.
But we had that beer on the train coming back, and that was I remember lifting it and had read about it before, and I thought, that's that funky Kellogg's beer. I'm going to have to try this. And like you say, your head is telling you it's cereal, it's milky, it's all the rest of it, and you do get that sort of like sweet kind of cereal vibe to it, but then it like totally kind of balances out with it, like the hops and everything. It was just really, I just remember it being, like you said, really enjoyable. Like it was like a perfect train beer, to be honest. Nothing too crazy before or after you have a bit of a sesh. So it's funky for sure.
I really like it. I mean, I'm a bigger fan of some of the other beers they do, but this particular one is, like I say, it's just really easy to drink a lot of. So I'm kind of grateful that they gave me sort of like a box of it today.
Game on for a Tuesday night, put it that way. So
Aye, why not?
Why not? That's how we like to relate. So we've got Paul here, the craft beer agent. If somebody's listening to this and they go, "What is the craft beer agent? Who are you, Paul, and what do you do?"
So the craft agent is right. Okay, so I've been in the craft beer industry for many, many years. I've been there right like from the start, pretty much. I was there. I used to work in Beer Ritz in Leeds, which was like one of the first craft beer shops, in the country. And I worked for a guy called Zach Avery, who's a legend, who he now runs Beer Paradise, which is a distribution company. And I was there when Punk IPA was first in bottles, and it had all that ridiculous spiel on the side about you don't have a clue what it is you're drinking and all this kind of stuff, So I kind of went from then, and then I worked for various breweries. I worked literally as a guy who washed casks. I did the cleaning out the mash tun, I did the cleaning the fermenters, drove the van, dropped the casks off. I did all of it, like that was, for a very, very low wage. But I had I was previous to that, I was a full-time touring musician, and I had a bit of a change in career, shall we say, and I didn't want to go back into kind of technology and all these things that I was actually qualified to do. So I went into brewing. So anyway, a long story short, I worked in various breweries and slowly made my way up as a sales guy, head of sales. I worked at Beer Hawk. I was the buyer at Beer Hawk for 2 years, and then after a kind of a moment where I just didn't really want to work for anybody anymore, it was actually my missus actually said, what about some kind of consultancy thing? And I always had it in my mind that I was like, consultant, it's not really like, you don't really do anything though, do you? and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, because that's not really what I'm into. So anyway, so I started off doing this thing where I was effectively offering breweries the opportunity to give to pay me what you may class as, say, a day rate, and do 1 day a week, but to use my black book, because I mean the thing that I love the most in craft beer is relationships. I love knowing people all around the world. So I ended up sort of wanting to be kind of a bit like the Saul Goodman of craft beer, in the sense, like, so I wanted brewery, to come to me and go, Paul, I really want to get my beer to Sweden. Like, do you know somebody? It's like, yeah, I know a guy.
Let me just turn to page 14. There we go.
And the whole point being that, these we were going into lockdown, and it was a time when it felt like breweries were needing to hire very well connected people for a very good wage, in order to to get to where they wanted to be. And what I wanted to do was offer them what I have for something that they could afford, that's really cheap actually, and they can get out at any time. I can get out at any time. I will keep working with you and bringing you the results and give you a return on your investment. That's kind of the whole point. But as that's gone on, it was originally everything, a bit of everything. UK, on trade, off trade, export if I could, and blah 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 blah. But nearly a year later, I've pretty much ditched everything to do with the UK. And that's mainly down to the fact that I realized that was something about the head of sales kind of role that I didn't really enjoy. I got bored of the phoning, the Duke of York and going, hi guys, how you doing? It's Paul. Do you want some beer this week? Okay, no worries. Okay, cool. See you later. Bye. I got really kind of bored of that side of it. But the relationships that I forged with the importers, I was lucky enough to travel quite a lot and go and meet these people. And I class them as friends. I don't class them as people that buy beer. I class them as friends. They trust me, I trust them. So when it comes to export, if anyone's, I mean, I'm sure that there will be some breweries that are listening to this or people that have got experience in it. Everyone will say it's a long process, especially when you don't know somebody. So let's say, for example, you're a brewery who wants to get your beer to Sweden, as I mentioned, you've got to find an importer. You've got to send that email that says, hi, I'm an award-winning brewery from X. You may not have heard of me yet, or blah, 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 or maybe you have heard of me.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in my beer? And then you've got to wait for the 4 weeks for them to actually say, oh, hi, sorry, this one is a spam. And you got to go through this process where you send samples, and what I kind of offer people is the opportunity to work with me is basically my importers know me and they trust me and they know that I would not send them crap. And so ultimately, if you want to get into these countries and I know who's buying at this point, I cut out a huge section of that process. So it's basically I can probably bring a process that could take 6 weeks. I could bring it down to 2, because I can say, hey, X in Sweden, I'm working with Seven Brothers at the minute. The pricing is fantastic. The beers are flawless. They're absolutely perfect for you. And I've had it now about 2 or 3 times, literally, where it's just like, yeah, I'll have a pallet. And I go, okay, cool. I've got your pallet in Sweden. They're like, what? And it's like, I've had it for a couple of weeks. And that's a nice thing, but then there are other things that still take that time. So I've ended up sort of moving away from the whole on and off trade in the UK sales thing. And it's actually a bit more bespoke. It's a bit more, I can get you around the world if you like. Or the other thing that I've been utilized on is the fact that obviously I was the buyer for Beerhawk. I've got a lot of experience of buying beer, knowing what it should cost, knowing what's a good deal, what's a bad deal, blah, 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 blah. And so, one of my clients, for example, is they've changed their name now to Beer Company, but they were called Beer Nuts before. And they just made snacks, like really awesome, like nuts in a can. I know it sounds crazy, but they're really good stuff.
I've seen them.
Oh, they're brilliant. And when I worked at Beerhawk, I bought 9 pallets off of them. And I think they never kind of forgot me for that. And so now they've moved more into an e-commerce side of things, and they've set up this ridiculously good website.
Every single day it pops up on my Facebook page every single day.
Exactly. They're going places, these guys. And so, they contacted me and said, how about you work for us on projects? And, we give you a project, you go and buy all the beer for it. And I go, yeah, no problem. That's what I can do. So the reason I've sort of yapped on a bit there, but the point of it is that the company started out very much like a consultancy, like I can help you get sales type thing. And over a period of like 9 months, let's say, I've actually specialized now. Actually, I work in export and procurement. That's all I do. I don't do any kind of UK stuff, apart from with Harrogate, who are a brewery that I work with, who are more traditional. I love them. They're a family-based business. I adore them, and I want to help them in any way I can. So I kind of push their stuff in as many avenues as I possibly can. But when it comes to new clients or even the other clients that I'm working with, I stick to those 2 categories now, because I feel like that's where I've got my little kind of niche, if that makes sense.
It just sounds like to me like you cut out the BS that can end up happening between, like you said, that initial contact, and you get that kind of email tennis. And I know myself and Mark, we're in a kind of account manager job, so you try to, in our sectors, kind of come up with new business stuff. So you end up with that, like you said, that email tennis going back and forward, which can take forever. But you've, like you said, you've got a black book of contacts who are reputable and know what they're talking about, who trust you on what you're saying. And like you said there, you'll phone them up and say, right, I've got this brewery who are producing fantastic beers. They'll trust your experience and go, I don't need to try it. Let's just get a pallet in. Fuck it.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are times that there are still people that need those samples, and there are, but for example, with Seven Brothers, who I work with, I can't go into it in too much detail, but I've got a very big deal going on with those guys at the minute, and probably the biggest I've ever done.
Mhm.
And and again, it all comes down to I suppose I choose who I work with using the same kind of processes that I used to use when I worked at Beerhawk. So, what's the brand like? What's the company ethos like? What are the beers like? Can they make beer? And I've had to try and distance myself from that whole thing of, it has to be the next Verdant, or it has to be the next, whatever hop soup you're drinking.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, actually the most important thing is that they're not dicks and the beer is consistently good. And it's going to appeal to an audience. That's the thing. So one of the reasons why I'm going to just big up Seven Brothers a little bit more here, and the only reason that is because, first of all, their story is absolutely gorgeous. There's 7 brothers and 4 sisters, 11 siblings, all working together. I mean, it's unheard of. And they all get on and they all love one another dearly. And I was there today. Like I said, I was at the brewery. Like, my God, they're a talented bunch, and oh God, look, they're like engineers and, it's like they just know how to do stuff,
They do. The story's crazy. Like I've been through the website and stuff and heard about their story. They're a brewery that we've been in contact with to get on the podcast. We've just never settled on a date. So Paul, just put a word in you.
I'll sort that out, boy. Man, I know the brothers, man. And, but they one of the reasons that I love working with them is, again, they are not, and they do not claim to be super craft. They don't claim to be the next, Wander Beyond or whatever. Yeah. They are just, they know how to make beer and they know how to make it right. And they, like I said, I've never tasted diacetyl. I've never tasted any kind of off flavor that shouldn't be there. Everything they give me is what it says it is on the can. And then you look at the can and you look at the big 7 on the front and you look at all the, all the beers are next to each other, everything just looks great. And also they're at a point where they can make beer at a decent enough price, especially to the export market. So, people in China and people in America and people in all these places look at that branding and look at that pricing and they go, bloody hell, that's really interesting, actually, Whereas, I have worked, say, with some people or, some brewers that are in the more super craft section. And you have to look at a smaller audience because beers are so expensive. It's just that simple. And even when you take the duty off and you're sending it abroad, and obviously you got Brexit to contend with, it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. I just find the Seven Brothers category really good, and I feel like they've nailed it, and I love it. There's so many people, so many importers that I've spoken to that go, I'm looking for something in this kind of field, and blah 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 blah. And there's so many times that I go, Seven Brothers, actually, they're perfect for you, And but then, I do work with one of the. I mean, I think honestly, if you've not tried it yet, I mean, if we're going to go down the super craft road, I mean, Jesus Christ, 2x2. Have you tried 2x2?
I've had a couple of times.
I've not tried them myself, but I've heard really big things about them, and I've just never managed to get my hands on them yet.
Oh, mate, honestly, it's just some of the best beer. I mean, it's the other way now. Now we're going into that step up. You're going to that point where this brewery knows it wants to be super craft, as opposed to maybe a bit more gateway. Mm-hmm. This is like, I mean, but somehow I don't know. Rob, the brewer there, he manages to just throw in everything in the kitchen sink at these beers, and yet they all come out balanced. And it's beautiful stuff, absolutely beautiful. But then, like I said, I also have Harrogate Brewery, who are more on the traditional side. They make a plum porter, which is absolutely mind-boggling, and everyone says it's better than Titanic. And and those guys, I've just got them exported out to Sweden, and we're looking at France and Russia and all these places that are actually looking at more slightly more traditional, but with really, again, family-owned business, beautiful branding. So it's all about kind of going. I don't know. I pick very carefully, and I'm very grateful that when the craft agent first started, I did get quite a few breweries knocking on the door, and I did have to turn quite a few away, and because it just wasn't right for what I'm looking for or what I know that my importers want. Or
at the same time, you're trying to build your own reputation of someone who is exporting quality beer. And like you said, with Seven Brothers, you've got a brewery there that, regardless of the style that they make, that from the reputation, you don't have to try it because it's going to, like you said, say exactly what it is in the tin. It's something that I know all of us in the podcast, Callum, as well, especially you say a lot of breweries. You need that beer to do exactly what it says in the tin. If it doesn't, just don't bother.
No, absolutely. And I mean, and that was my biggest. I mean, this is where I suppose the experience of being the buyer for Beerhawk comes in, because you got to bear in mind, you're coming to work every day. There'd be a box on your table with a letter inside that says, "Hi, we're an award-winning brewery based in, Berkshire, and we make the best goddamn IPA you've ever tasted, and it goes in the sample fridge, and then you'd get to 4 or 5 o'clock and it'd be time to have a little taste, and so many of those beers get poured away. So many, you taste it and you go, nope, that is unfortunately, and it's got nothing to do with how cool it is, anything. We're at the first stage. Does the beer taste good?
Yeah.
Or
taste good.
is it made well?
Yeah.
Do they know what they're doing? And it's amazing that I would say 90, dare I put this percentage out there, but it is something ridiculous. Like, I'd say 96% of what I was sent never made it onto the shelf.
I can imagine. I can quite believe that, to be fair, because we've seen that even through the podcast when we've had people and breweries come on, they send us their new beers and all the rest of it, and we're quite lucky because there's, like you say, there's 4 of us, so it's quite a good panel to try a beer and give it quite an honest feedback, because everybody's palate's different, and it is when you get and it's like, oh, this is our new super duper IPA, and you think, okay, it's middle of the road sort of IPA for me, and then it's Gav's favourite, it's Callum's worst. McGill will drink anything. He's not here, but he'll drink anything. But I think that's when you're setting a business up like you have to be. You've got to be honest. You've got to be thinking, look, I believe my palate. I've got this. I know good beer in terms of where it comes from, etc. And I've just kind of got to put my hat on what I believe in, and then when you're selling it to Sweden, who seem to have an absolute savage craft beer market by the sounds of it. You've got their trust in your palate as well as what your reputation. So no, good.
No, definitely. It's a difficult one because I'm trying to obviously do the best for the breweries, get them the best GP, all that kind of stuff, because I'm having to obviously bring the business head into it as well, because I tend to, work on their pricing with them, especially when it comes to export. I know what countries want what at what price, and that is quite. And I know that some countries can be really cutthroat, whereas other countries can actually pay quite a bit more for beer.
I was actually going to ask you that, if it's difficult judging, so if you're using, you're exporting to, 3 different countries, and is it just a totally different ball game for each country? And is it as crazy as that for each country? You've got to basically negotiate price and all that of it.
Yeah. I mean, and especially since Brexit, because The thing that's interesting since Brexit is that we are now exporting. I mean, we have to get our beer out of our country is one thing, and then we have to get the beer into the country that it's going to, the destination, and so that is those two different things. Now, they all used to be one thing when we were in the EU, for example. So, I mean, ignoring rest of the world countries like America and China and things like that, if we're sending beer out to Europe, anywhere, France, Germany, that it's the same for them if this beer was coming from Chile. So now we're not in the EU anymore, and it therefore means that whatever they have to do to import beer from Chile, they have to do with us. So, for example, if you're exporting beer to Finland now, you have to provide a chemical breakdown and analysis of each beer that's coming in. So a laboratory test for each beer with all the chemical breakdown on a piece of paper for each beer that's gone in. Don't have to do that anywhere else so far. I haven't found, but you do have to do it in Finland, but all of this is we're all learning, and everyone's learning at the same sort of pace, and now there's this whole food and beverage operator thing that is crazy. So, everyone needs an FBO. I don't know if I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs here, but
no, definitely not.
No, it's great. Like, basically, you've got two options when you're exporting to the EU now in terms of what you do with your can. So it only applies to cans. So on the can, you have to have either all the details, including the address of the importer that you're sending the beer to. Now, and as anyone would know, that is a bloody nightmare, because if I'm sending I'm sending a pallet of beer to France.
Yeah.
Are you really going to have a pallet's worth of labels made just with that importer written on it? No. So the only way to do it is you then hire somebody in Europe to act as your FBO, that you then pay an annual fee that is effectively like purchasing a PO box in Luxembourg. They are your point of contact, the customs and excise in the EU. Any questions, they go to your FBO, and so, but that's another thing. I hook you up with an FBO. I get all that stuff sorted for you so that you don't have to think about it. And is it easy? No.
No, it doesn't sound easy.
What an awesome job, eh? Just being an FBO for something and saying that, whatever they say, whatever they send, it's liquid gold. Import, that'll be fine.
No, if they need one in Eastbourne, I'm your man.
Like what you just said there, though, is exactly right, because they are kind of doing what the craft agent is doing, but they're doing a lot less work because they're able to provide this service that everyone wants. But I've got to be honest, the FBOs that I have used so far, they're extremely reasonable and wicked people, so it's all fine.
I mean, I'll do it for a pallet a month,
We're negotiating already. Half whatever they take, we'll quite happily do. So, put our names on any form. We'll say yes, that's absolute liquid gold. Correct? Anything? Yep, all is fine.
No, I mean, I do make it all sound like it's, you go with a craft agent and you've got sales and stuff. It's not quite that simple.
Yeah.
And it people are still looking for certain things that I can't give them. And but what it is that I give them a place to go. So ultimately, my guy, again, I don't know, let's say my guy in Spain might be like, God, I really need this particular style of beer in this sort of price bracket. I wonder who's Paul's working with, and then they'll message me and go, you don't have any beers that match this kind of deal? And I go, yeah, I do actually. I've got this. And how much?
Seven Brothers.
Well, yeah, or exactly, Seven Brothers. Or like one of the beautiful things was I got Harrogate into Sweden recently.
Wow.
It's their first proper export. they decided they needed, my importer over there needed, he wanted some more traditional things. So he wanted the plum porter.
Mhm.
Well, there you go, a bitter and a pale ale. And so we had the conversation about how much he would buy, this, that, the other. And I literally just went to Harrogate and went, look, I've got you an import on the table now. If you want it, can you brew these beers for me? Put them in a key keg. Obviously we'll look at the pricing together, blah, 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 blah. And they did. They went away. They brewed all 3 of the beers that he wanted. The lorry came, picked him up, took him away, and out of nowhere, bang, Harrogate made it to Sweden, and it's kind of, and it's nice to be able to do that. But it took a long time for Harrogate because they are more niche in that traditional beer market. They are a lot more kind of like, a hand pull, and so
Cask stuff.
Yeah, mainly cask, but also they've got a little sidearm at the minute. Like typically, they've got this little sidearm called Hagdown, where they're brewing more kind of crafty beers.
Yeah.
And their brewer did a beer called Iris recently, which was a New England IPA, and it was his first ever attempt at one. And I'm not even kidding you. I think at the minute on Untapped, it's averaging about 4.3.
It's amazing for Untapped.
I know, it's like, oh my god, that was your first go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and it's like, go on,
that kind of. We spoke to a brewery down Hogsback, Gaff. Where are they based?
Hogsback,
down south. Yeah,
kind of Guildford almost.
Yeah, so that the way you talk about their bread and butter's kind of traditional English beers, and Hogsback are along the same ilk, but they're kind of dipping their toe into the craft scene as well, and they're growing as much of their own hops as they can, and that the story is quite similar, and I love that style, that kind of brewery that we want to try and get crafty, if you like, but we're not by any stretch, we're not leaving our traditional roots behind. No. I quite like that kind of thing.
No, that sounds, that's perfect. And I mean, and also everything comes, all these things go around in circles, and we're going to be seeing, I don't know how many people who run micro pubs and craft beer bars now that have said to me, why isn't anyone making bitter anymore? It's like, we need a bitter. It's, we would buy loads of it if they made a really good bitter. And it's because bitter isn't a cool style, but I guarantee you, I reckon 2022 is going to be the year that people start drinking mild. And people
an Imperial mild, Marky boy.
I was speaking to a brewer the other day about that. I said, I was in helping a brewery out, actually. And he says, well, what do you want to brew next? And I was like, got a couple of ideas. And I said to him, I think we should bring back the mild. And he was looking at me like, fucking, and he brews cask. He's like, nobody drinks it. And I says, but I think we should modernize it and make it an Imperial mild. And he says, what is that? And I says, I don't know. I'm making it up right now, because I think by just throwing the word Imperial on there and ramping it up, even if you made it like 5% rather than the 3%, and we ramp it to 6%, like 6% in a cask is maybe a wee bit OTT, but I says there's a market for that somewhere. And he was like, interesting. And that's the second person that's came on afterwards, and I've told this story to. So I'm actually going to have to phone Rab and be like, mate, we're on to something. Get this thing good.
You totally are. I mean, imagine an Imperial bitter.
Mate, I wondered if Eric will let me brew it for the festival.
The Bowden.
I'm right. I'm right.
If you think about, like the red ale became quite a crafty style there for a while, a red IPA and things like that. But like Buxton did a really good red IPA, and just with that kind of that bitterness twang that you would expect from a more traditional beer, but brought forward into the craft kind of revolution, as they were calling it then. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of kind of legs in that crafty, the more traditional style coming back. And also, we are still one of the only countries that really embraces the cask. But Sweden is a country that love cask. and Italy as well. That they're really into cask ale.
I would never have said that.
Well, that was a kind of question that I wanted to ask you, Paul. Is there a country that you found that are kind of really getting on board in the last kind of 6 to 12 months that are really getting on board in the kind of craft beer scene that want to push it and kind of get it out there a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, craft beer is spread like a disease.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, there's not many countries that do not already embrace it, but I'd say Italy is really interesting. Like Italy is phenomenal actually, because the importer I work with over there, his biggest selling beer is Manchester Marble Bitter.
Wow.
Man.
Who knew?
I won't go into
No, it's fine.
into quantities, but let's just say he buys a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, for example, and then the other one is Lucky Jack from Lervig. But obviously Lucky Jack is exactly what we were talking about with Seven Brothers in terms of something that is, I mean, like Lervig, we all know can make absolutely wonderful, like superb craft beer. It's gorgeous stuff. But Lucky Jack is kind of your session can.
Yep.
And my God, he goes through, I don't know, I mean, I daren't even say how many pallets he goes through of that stuff. Like Lucky Jack is his biggest beer. And
wow.
But then the most popular beer in Italy is, and you're all Scots.
Don't say it.
Tennent's Super.
Super nice.
Super.
Fucking hell.
It is. I remember when we were in Italy and we were like, we'll get Peroni and we'll get stuck in with the lagers and that. And the guy was like, it's got Tennent Super. And we were looking at each other thinking, we wouldn't drink this shit in Glasgow. Never mind in Italy.
That's the drink of choice for your Jakey on the out on the street in Scotland.
No, but
I know, mate. I know. I come from like I know I've lost a lot of my twang, but I come from like Romford, Essex. So it was one of those things when you went to a park, there was always crushed up cans of Tennent's Super next to the benches, And but then I went to Tuscany a couple of years ago just for a little break, for 4 or 5 days in a little kind of cottage in the middle of nowhere. And there was one kind of pizza place in town, and Tennent's Super was the only beer they had.
Super.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
Honestly, I remember having that conversation in the pub because they were like, it's like Peroni and that is like us drink like Tennent's on the tap, and you think, here we go again. And that's how they thought about like Moretti and Peroni and the usual stuff that you get. But when they were drinking Tennent's, they were like, it's an exported special lager and all the rest of it. And I remember thinking like, but to be honest with you, it did taste better when you were sitting in the sun. So let's be honest, it's not a bad shoot.
Well, I think anything tastes better as well when somebody else tells you that it's good. So, so basically, all these years we've associated Tennent's Super with exactly what you've talked about, and something strong that people drink with the only purpose to get drunk, when actually there was a reason originally why Special Brew was made, and chances are I haven't, do you know what? In my years and years of being in the beer industry, I haven't drank a can of Special Brew. And there's something actually that says to me, I'm probably actually not in a position to talk about anything until I actually taste Special Brew.
Yeah. I suppose you're right. Yeah.
So what if I drink that, having drink, like, I'm somebody who's got a fridge full of 11, 12. I mean, I've got Imperial iced IPA from Emelise in there for 16%, and I know. And it's like, what kind of a beer guy or in inverted commas expert am I if I can't drink Special Brew and actually decide whether it's a good or a bad beer?
Correct.
Yep.
So the next time you're in Scotland, we'll all sit down for a few scoops of Special.
That sounds like a legend.
No. Fuck me. Fuck that. I can't stand it. Give me regular tenants. I'm your man.
Sorry, I've just I had to go and reach into the fridge there and get another beer out now. This is another Seven Brothers brew that I got today. This is called Depth Charge, because they're doing the 7 series, which is basically
look at those cans. How cool are those cans?
I know every brother gets their own beer. So Kit was the youngest brother. Sorry, he's not the youngest. He's the second youngest. And he did like an imperial stout that was called peanut butter on a Jaffa cake, which was basically something that he apparently used to notoriously eat as a kid. And so they're trying to do that whole family thing. And Nathan was a professional rugby player for England.
Oh well.
And he was, I guess he's obsessed with raspberries.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been a fan of their beers for quite some time, and we've had kind of brief conversations for them to come on the podcast, and we've just never nailed in a date. So fingers crossed we'll get them on sometime soon. Their beers are genuinely very, very good and very worth getting your hands on.
Yeah, they're really, really good.
And it's like you said, Paul, it's one of those breweries that regardless of the style, they just nail they've just got that consistency, and you cannot like having a brewery that you trust that is going to make consistent. Look at that. That looks lovely.
I mean, it's like the perfect paint.
It's beautiful.
You know,
colour's lovely.
Kind of red colour, right?
Red kind of ambery colour looks fantastic. But having a brewery that you know consistently, regardless of what's on the can, and if it's a style you maybe not like normally, that they're just going to be consistently good. And having that trust is always something that I kind of lean on with the breweries myself.
I was going to ask you, do you have any breweries that you work with up above the border for you up in Bonnie, Scotland?
Well, interestingly, not yet. There's something in the pipeline.
Beer Fridge Brewing. All right.
No, I've been doing
Billy's 80 shilling in Finland.
That's it. No. Sweden, they like their cask.
Oh well, you never know. But no, I mean, I've done a few things like, you know, from the procurement side. I've bought a lot of beer from Black Isle and Glenafric.
Does Glenafric technically count because they moved south?
The breweries in the Highlands, though.
It's Liverpool. It's in the world.
In the world now as well.
Oh, they got one over there as well.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even know that. I've only. It was. Do you know what though? That guy Trevor. What a lovely bloke. He pulled out. He pulled out the stops for me, man. I tell you, to get me some stuff sorted, because one of the projects I've been working on. It's okay, I can talk about it now because it's public knowledge. I mean, what I had to do for Beer Nuts, the beer company now, as they're called, is their Euro 2021 box.
Yes, seen that.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, hey, Craft Agent got all the beers for that. And so what I had to do was I had to go 24 beers from 24 different countries at rather large quantity. So obviously there were things like, you know, Macedonia, which was going to be a nightmare. You know, it's just daft. I mean, how many breweries are there in Macedonia? You know, there's barely any.
Are you telling me they're no Tennent's super fans either?
Well, and so basically, I had to, we had to do things like work with some British breweries to brew a beer. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, man. And so, you know, we had to work with some British breweries to brew a beer to represent that country. And it was hard.
I think it's probably going to be harder, and make it harder is, I've just noticed, it's 24 lagers. It's not like different styles. It's just 24 lagers. Which
exactly, all lagers. So if I approached anybody at that point, knowing full well that you need about 6 weeks to properly lager a beer.
Yeah.
And we had quite a short time in order to get the beers brought into the country. that was a difficult project, but I mean, it's such a cool idea that they've done though, because the whole point of the boxes is gamified. You know, you're supposed to drink the losing beer of each match, and so you move your beers through on the league table.
So we'll save the Scottish one to last, then, eh?
That's right.
Exactly. He takes it up to the final. And then, but they've also got this amazing thing. They've got this like EPP thing going on where basically if you can't be bothered to do that and you just end up drinking all the beers, you can scan a code and you can get a emergency care package of all the beers back again for a lower price.
Oh, wow.
So you can then do the game. If you just want to drink them and you want to have fun, then you can, and you can go beep, and then you can get the beers replenished.
Shit.
I might just
Dangerous.
order 3 there just now, just to prep, so you can get a tasting box, and then 2 boxes for watching. Because let's be honest, being the Scots, will probably need.
No, stop it. No, be positive. Stop it, Mark. Do not say you're drinking it first. Do not say you're drinking it first. It's taken us this long to get here. Okay.
All right, we'll be drinking ours at halftime because we know the result already.
Nah, it's that fucked. But no, I seen that about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It popped up on my Facebook, and wicked idea, brilliant idea. Absolutely love that the premise behind it, and the marketing is fantastic for it.
Oh, it's really good, and you know, the young kind of extremely enthusiastic guys who really want to bring something kind of new to the kind of e-commerce side of the craft beer industry, you know, because we've been very used to your beer hawks and your beer wolves and those kind of people. And these guys wanted to kind of, I don't know, they want to make it a little bit more.
It feels edgy.
Yeah, it is edgy.
It feels different. It feels different. I know, like all the marketing stuff I've seen from them, it feels completely different and like proper, like trendy, and like they want to focus on like social media and Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And it's not so much your traditional marketing. They want to be a little bit different, and the labeling's like really cool and really just out there. Like, yeah, it's always been quite popping for me.
Yeah. I mean, I've been really happy to work with them, and yeah, you know, I'm going to be working on some interesting boxes coming up. And you know, again, I kind of get to do what I did before, like back in the Beer Hawk days, but this time it's a slightly different model that I'm working for. So for example, I found a brewery from Liverpool the other week called Carnival, who have you tried their stuff?
I have tried one of their cans, which I managed to get from a local bottle shop. I don't know how he got it, but I managed to get from a local bottle shop in Eastbourne. He found them and he's like, "Oh, their beer's awesome." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll trust you."
I was really shocked. I was like, "I've never heard of you. Wow, this is really damn good beer," you know. And again, pretty much like consistent across all the, you know, they sent me a nice bunch of samples. I mean, one of the ones, one of the beers was like a margarita lime goes, and I was like, Jesus, this is either going to be perfect or terrible.
Yeah.
And it was definitely the former. It was really good. And so, you know, so I've gone to Beer Nuts / Beer Company, you know, and I've gone to them and gone, actually, we need to do something with these guys, you know. But there's also kind of, I don't know, like, and it's nice though, because I get to kind of, the craft agent can kind of take on a few different guises. But like I say, I initially started out to help people get sales.
Yeah.
It's not quite that anymore. It's actually a bit more business development now. In terms of,
it's like exposure and kind of getting the name out there for the different breweries, and that, like you said, there's an aspect of sales obviously in there, but it's not so much sales specific. I mean, I'm coming from my kind of sales background and thinking about it how you would do it, and yeah, there's a lot of different aspects in there.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way. Like I said to you at the very start, the problem with export and the problem with any kind of export role as a full-term job in a brewery is the amount of time these things take.
Yeah.
Because if you're the kind of employer, and I've worked for them, if you're the if you're the kind of employer that just wants to see consistent sales, you know, over a period of weeks, or even months sometimes. You're not going to get that actually with export. But if you're just patient and you trust me that the conversations are happening, I'm having, you know, I know exactly what they want, when they want it, and how. It's just a case of, you know what, we've got to just give them a chance.
Yeah.
And eventually, if we can meet them where we need to meet them, what I want is regular business. I don't want it to be like anyone can sell a pallet of beer to a country and sell it at a ridiculous price, and that importer will buy it because it's the beer is good, etc. But then what I then say to people is, yeah, but did they come back?
Yep.
And they don't a lot of the time because of
Yeah.
loads of breweries that they can buy at that sort of price as well. However, you can establish a brand in a country where, you know, you've got one product, let's say, you know, you've got one beer out of your portfolio that you are able to kind of sacrifice. I'm not talking a bunch. I'm talking sacrifice a bit of your GP with the move that you're actually going to end up selling 2 pallets a month of this stuff. So it ends up working out way more profit for you than if you'd done 1 pallet for like once. Then, you know, that's what I'm ideally looking for. I want them to go, oh, Paul found me, you know, X in Italy, and he managed to get us this business, and now I've got a regular importer, and, you know, I could have done it without Paul, you know, because anyone can do it without me. Anyone can, but it's the same. Anyone can move house without a removal company.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, it's nice when they come in and pack up your shit.
Oh Christ, don't tell me. I know. But yeah, it's that kind of mindset of you'd rather sell 5 pallets to 5 accounts than sell 1 pallet to 10 accounts. It's makes perfect sense to me as a salesman. Question for Mark, Callum, and myself: if there's a brewery out there who individually you think is making fantastic beer, who you wish and you would love to see in these countries like Italy and Finland, where Paul is making waves and bringing these beers to the masses, a brewery individual who you would love to see when you go on holiday, if you're in Benidorm and you're sitting there and you go, you know what, I would love a wee cheeky
Benidorm. Benidorm with my budgie smugglers on, waiting for a pint of super tea and
Nice.
something else next to it.
So obviously, like, Paul's mantra is quality. You got to go, Callum. You're wiggling that can in front of us. Go. You may as well go first. While he thinks.
Fierce. So I don't know if you've had many beers, Paul, from Fierce.
Yeah, very good.
So it's consistently great beer from Fierce, and you know they do the whole range. So the quote unquote supermarket standard beer, right down to the barrel aged, you know, double imperial, all the rest. And for me, they're certainly from a Scottish perspective, they're right up there with the best.
Yeah.
No, they're a very, 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 very good brewery. No, I've been a fan of them. Again, going right back to, I went up to one of the Brewdog AGMs when I was
lucky you.
When I was with the Beer Hawk guys.
Yeah.
And the next day, when we were all, you know, slightly hanging, ended up in the Fierce Tap in Aberdeen, and it was just like, oh my God, these beers are great.
Yeah, they knock it out of the park. I'm going to go before Mark, in case you steal any of mine. I'm going to take 2 off my board behind me here. First one is going to be one who, I'm telling you this right now, we found these guys first for anybody else, and it's these guys right there. Drop Project, that one right there, that yellow one.
Yeah.
Drop Project from Crystal Palace. They make banging beers. The Crystal Palace base, the brewery is awesome. The guys there are fantastic, and they make fantastic beers. And if I go north of the border, go back home to Edinburgh, that one right there, Top Out. Yes, I fucking stole it. Fuck you. Yes. One of the best Westies, if not the best West Coast IP that we have tasted in a long, long time. And incidentally, it won our best IPA in our awards last year.
Last year, the Cody.
Yeah, 2020.
2020. The Beer Fridge podcast best IPA was from Top Out there, West Coast. The Cone is an absolutely tremendous beer, and we thoroughly recommend both those breweries in Crystal Palace and in Edinburgh.
Well, I can safely say I'm very sorry to both of those breweries. I've yet to have the pleasure. So
that's why we're here. That's what you can take us to then give you new.
No, you're right, man. You know, tell them to give me a call.
We'll be the Craft Agent podcast here. We'll reconnect you.
Go on then, Matt. I think I stole one of yours. Sorry, mate.
Top Out was the easy one for me because I think with their sort of their kind of German influence with Scottish flavour as well, like for export purposes, I think it would be a winner. Obviously, I'm sticking with Scotland. I would maybe look at Tempest, maybe.
Great.
Just again, their core beers are always banging, but their dark beers are just on another level when they turn it up to with the Mexicakes and the Old Pinocchios and all the rest of it that they kind of decide to pump out at their 12, 13, 14%, which is...
All the Leaves are Brown.
All the Leaves are Brown, that's the other one.
I love that beer.
That's, I think, and to be honest with you, one of the best podcasts and evenings probably was recorded, and the guys that listen to this podcast will be like, Mark, shut up, you've told us about Tempest 300 times, but honestly the night
it's
a good night.
It's actually the most listened to podcast we've had in the 2.5 years.
Yeah. Really? No, they're lovely people, man. I've been up to the brewery. I went up to visit them, and we actually did a beer together. We did an Oktoberfest beer when I was working at Beerhawk.
Yeah.
Cool.
Somehow, I don't even know why, but we ended up deciding that we wanted David Jason on the front. So we ended up doing an Oktoberfest beer with them called A Touch of Prost.
Oh, that's amazing. I was just about to say it would be even better if it wasn't David Jason as Del Boy. It would be David Jason as Jack Frost. Yeah.
Oh, mate, he had on the cover, like Dan, who I used to work with, did the design, and he was wearing lederhosen, with his like little hat on with a feather, like with a big stein. David Jason blowing the foam off the top of it. You know, it was pretty cool. And I did get in touch with David, like via his agent, to say, like, you know, do me a favor, man, please, can I get a photo op of you drinking this beer? And he was like, sorry, man, I don't do any of that sort of shit. And I was like, oh, well, you know, at least you responded, you know. But it was basically like, I don't put my name like really to anything. I don't mind you taking the mickey out of me on the front of that because it looks fun, you know, kind of thing. But I'm not going to kind of endorse it, you know. But at the same time, I'm not going to sue you. So that was kind of cool.
That's fair enough. That's happy days. Paul, if there's a brewery out there, and I know there is breweries who we've had on the podcast who do listen to the podcast, and they want to get in touch with you, how would be the best way to do so?
Best way to do it would be to drop me an email. Very simple. I mean, I've got a website that is kind of ready to go, but I've just not launched it. So there's just like a placeholder thing there, but literally it's just paul@thecraftagent.com. And literally, you know, I'm up for a chat. I'm not like one of these guys that's like, right, if you work with me, you will pay me this. I will do this and I will deliver. It's not quite like that. It's more like, give me a ring, talk to me. Like, let's have a chat about what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Do you export already? Have you tried to export? You know, what's your experience with it? do you have any experience with it? You know, it's kind of like let's have a chat, and then I'll try your beer, see if it's any good, and then from there on, the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah, definitely. Well, make sure breweries out there who we know are friends of the podcast, and we know you guys listen because you tell us you do, and we trust you that you do. And we trust you that you make it this far as well. Make sure you give Paul a shout. 100% going to be worth it. He knows his stuff as we've gathered, and yeah, definitely worth giving him a shout and get your stuff out there. Why the hell not?
Yeah. That's it. Let's do it.
Why the hell not? As always, the Beerfish podcast is sponsored by This Week in Craft Beer. Head This Week in Craft Beer, sign up to the weekly newsletter, get all the craft beer news from your favourite breweries and the all-important new beers list as well. And we're powered by patreon.com. Head to patreon.com/Beerfish podcast. You can get access to exclusive content. You can show your support for the podcast as well. And you never might know, the guys might send you some of the homebrew if you're lucky enough.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
You still no sent it yet?
No, it's
no, he sent it.
Good lad.
It was only 3 weeks late. So
you will get it eventually. Head to patreon.com/Beer Fridge Podcast. Paul, absolute pleasure. This has been a lot of fun and a different aspect to the podcast as well, which I've thoroughly enjoyed having a chat with you.
Oh, mate, honestly, I've really enjoyed it. Trust me, the pleasure's all mine.
Awesome, mate. Until next time in the podcast, bye.
Toodaloo.
Adios.